When you grow up being the good kid, people assume you're fine with anything. They pile responsibilities on you, expect perfect grades, ask for favors without saying thank you, and trust that you'll just smile and keep going. And I did for years. My name's Wesley, I'm 24, and up until a few months ago, I lived at home with my parents and my younger sister, Brielle. She's 21, dropped out of college, got pregnant with twins, and now everyone acts like she's some kind of saint for it. But before I say something I can't take back, let me just tell you how this all started, because I swear, I never planned to get revenge. At first, I just wanted peace. Things hadn't always been tense between us. Growing up, Brielle and I were close. I taught her how to ride a bike. We used to stay up watching cartoons together, and she used to call me her hero. But somewhere around high school, things shifted. She started getting into trouble, minor at first, skipping classes, partying too much, always blaming someone else when things went wrong. And each time she messed up, it was like my parents leaned harder on me. Wesley, can you pick up your sister from school? Wes, take her to her part-time job. She missed the bus again. I never complained. I figured that's what big brothers do. After college, I moved back home to save money while I worked my IT job remotely. I paid rent, helped with groceries, and did my part around the house. I even used a chunk of my savings to buy a used black Corolla, a reliable little car I kept spotless because I treated it like a symbol of the independence I was slowly earning. Meanwhile, Brielle got pregnant and everything changed. My parents freaked out at first. Mom cried. Dad walked around in stunned silence for days. But once the twins were born, it was like they flipped a switch. Suddenly, Brielle was the brave young mother, the family's pride. They decorated her room with cribs and pastel wallpaper, filled the kitchen with organic baby food, and rearranged their lives around her needs. And I didn't mind, not at first. Babies are hard work, and I figured she needed the support. But then, the shift started. I noticed it one night after dinner. Mom was washing dishes, humming to herself. Dad was scrolling through his phone. Brielle was bouncing one of the babies on her hip, and I was clearing the table. Wesley, Dad said without looking up, we were talking. Brielle could use your room. I stopped mid-step. What? Just temporarily, Mom added quickly. She needs more space for the babies. You'll be fine in the basement. I looked at them, waiting for the punchline. Our basement wasn't finished. It had concrete floors, exposed pipes, and a smell like old laundry and mildew no matter how many dehumidifiers we ran. She can't even fit both cribs in her room anymore, Mom said. And you're barely in there, working all day. It's not just about space, Brielle chimed in. I'm up all night with the babies. The crying's keeping you up, right? This way we all get sleep. I could barely get a word in. It was already decided. That's how it worked in our house. Make the choice, then pretend it's a group decision. I nodded, said, okay, and moved downstairs that night. I didn't sleep well. The basement was cold and lonely, and the walls echoed with the sound of pipes groaning every time someone flushed upstairs. My mattress was on the floor. I used an old extension cord to plug in a lamp and set up my laptop on a plastic table. No one came to check how I was doing. Not even Brielle. The next morning, I came upstairs to make coffee. Brielle was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone. My car keys weren't in the bowl where I always left them. Hey, I asked, you seen my keys? Oh, she said casually. I took the car. The babies had a checkup. Hope you don't mind. I stood there for a moment. You took my car? I was going to ask last night, but you were already downstairs. She didn't even look up. I'll be back before lunch. That was the first time I felt the sharp sting, not just of disrespect, but of being invisible. I wasn't consulted. I wasn't asked. My property was just hers now, apparently, and no one said a word. And that pattern repeated. Over the next week, she took my car 3 more times, once without even telling me, which made me late for a client call. I tried bringing it up to Mom and Dad, gently at first. She just needs a little help right now, Mom said, brushing it off. You're being selfish, Wesley. Selfish. That word stung. After everything I'd done, after years of being the reliable one, the good son, by the time Sunday rolled around, I was stewing. I didn't say anything. I just kept the peace. But it was like every day brought a new reminder that I didn't really matter. I was a backup plan, an extra body in the house they could shuffle around when it suited them. And I started to think, if I vanished tomorrow, would they even notice? Or would they just turn my basement bed into storage space for Brielle's diapers? The answer came faster than I thought. One Thursday evening, after a long day of work and no coffee, Brielle had taken the car again, and I couldn't get to the store. Dad came downstairs. I was sitting on the edge of my mattress, eating cold leftovers off a paper plate. He didn't even knock. Just opened the door and stepped in like it was a utility closet. "Your sister needs the car full-time now," he said, standing in the doorway with his arms crossed. I blinked. "Excuse me. She's got appointments, daycare visits, grocery runs. You don't even leave the house most days." "It's my car," I said slowly, calmly. "I paid for it. I insure it. I bought it with my own money." "And she's your family," he said flatly. "Family supports each other. By taking their stuff?" He raised his voice then, just a little. "You're not special anymore, Wesley. You're a grown man living in our basement. Your sister has twins. She needs the space. She needs the car. Be useful for once." Useful. That word echoed in my chest like a dropped brick. I nodded, very slowly. "Okay." He looked almost surprised. Maybe he expected a fight. Maybe he thought I'd shout or cry. But I didn't. I just stared at him until he left. Then I sat in the dim light for a long, long time, listening to the pipes rattle over my head. That night, I didn't sleep either. But I didn't toss and turn. I was thinking, planning. By Saturday, my aunt and uncle were visiting. We hadn't seen them in a while. Dad's sister and her husband, both pretty well off, both pretty vocal about how much they adored Brielle and the babies. Everyone was laughing upstairs, the smell of roast chicken filling the house. I stayed in the basement. Not out of spite, but because I had something to finish. And then, I heard it. My aunt's voice, sharp and startled, echoing down the staircase. "Oh my goodness, what is this?" The whole house went quiet. You could have heard a pacifier drop. I didn't move. I just waited. Quietly. Calmly. Because the moment she opened that basement door was exactly what I had planned for. And that's where things really began. She gasped so loud it made the twins start crying. My aunt, Melissa, had always been the more dramatic of my dad's siblings. Big hair, louder voice, allergic to silence. But this gasp? It was different. It wasn't theatrical. It was real. You could hear the disgust in her throat. Shock. Confusion. Her heels clicked slowly on the steps as she descended halfway, probably expecting to see me watching TV or playing video games in some messy bachelor den. Instead, she found what looked like a cold, makeshift bunker. The smell of mildew hit her first. Then her eyes landed on the exposed pipes. The bare concrete walls. My mattress on the floor. My laptop sitting on 2 stacked crates because I didn't even have a real desk anymore. "Oh no, no," she muttered. "Wesley." I looked up from the laptop screen. "Hey." She blinked. "You're sleeping down here?" I nodded. "Yep." She didn't move. "But where's your bed? Your furniture?" "Gave them up," I said with a straight face. "My room's upstairs now. For Brielle. And the twins." There was this heavy pause. A silence so dense you could feel the walls vibrating with it. And then, behind her, I heard more footsteps. Thudding. Hesitant. Uncle Dan peeked over her shoulder. His eyes darted across the room and narrowed. What in the world? And just like that, the mood upstairs shifted. From laughter to tension. From roast chicken to exposed secrets. Because Aunt Melissa didn't go back up quietly. She stormed. Heels pounding, voice rising. And I sat there listening like I was underwater. Every word she shouted muffled but sharp enough to cut through the walls. "You moved him into the basement? Are you kidding me, Matthew? He pays rent." That was the first time anyone said it out loud. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't need to. The damage was already done. But something cracked open that day. A small fissure in the mask my parents wore. A hairline fracture in the narrative they loved to tell. That everything was fair. That I was just being dramatic. That Brielle deserved all this help because her life was harder. And once that crack formed, things started to slide. In the days that followed, I noticed how little eye contact Mom made when she passed me. How Brielle became more passive-aggressive than usual, like she was mad I hadn't kept our arrangement quiet. But I never said a word to Aunt Melissa. I didn't need to. She saw everything. And she started calling me, once, twice a week, just to check in. Meanwhile, back at home, things kept unraveling. 2 weeks later, I opened the fridge to find half my meal prep gone. Not just one container, 3 of them. Gone. Poof. I'd started cooking for myself separately, labeling everything clearly, trying to draw some boundaries. Apparently, that meant nothing. I confronted Brielle in the living room. She was lounging with a bowl of chips, one twin on her chest, the other asleep in a bassinet. "Hey," I said. "You see the containers labeled Wes? They're missing." She barely glanced up. "Yeah, Mom said I could have them." I stared at her. "You didn't ask me?" "They were just sitting there," she said with a shrug. "And you always make too much." I clenched my jaw. "That's not the point." "Well, maybe don't leave food in a shared fridge if you don't want people touching it." I took a deep breath. "This isn't college. We're not roommates." "No," she said, leaning back smugly. "We're family, which means sharing." I walked away before I said something I'd regret. But inside, I was boiling. That same night, I tried locking the fridge with one of those dumb cable locks I ordered online. Dad saw me doing it and lost his mind. "Are you insane? Locking up food like this is prison." I turned around calmly. "Then stop treating me like a prisoner." He flinched, just for a second, then stormed off muttering something about attitude problems. The next day, the lock was mysteriously gone, cut clean with wire cutters, sitting on the counter like a decapitated warning. That was when I realized something important. This wasn't just about Brielle anymore. This was about control, about power. I'd always been the obedient son, the one who didn't make waves. And now that I was drawing boundaries, locking up my food, asking for my car back, expecting respect, they didn't know what to do with me. I was no longer convenient. And then came the final straw. The moment I knew, deep in my gut, that this wasn't just mistreatment. It was betrayal. It started with a phone call. I was in the basement, on a Zoom call with a client, when my phone buzzed with a text from my insurance company. Something about policy changes. At first, I ignored it. But then I checked it during lunch. And my stomach dropped. It said my auto insurance policy had been updated. A new primary driver added. Brielle. I blinked. Reread the message 5 times. My car. My insurance. And somehow, my sister was now listed as the primary driver. I immediately called the company. The agent was polite, but firm. "Yes, it looks like the change was requested last week and verified over the phone." "With what proof?" "She answered the security questions," he said, "including your date of birth and policy number." That's when I realized my parents. They had access to my paperwork. I'd kept it in a file cabinet in my old room. They must have dug through it. When I asked Brielle directly, she didn't even deny it. "It's just easier this way," she said. "I'm the one using it." "It's fraud," I replied. "You impersonated me." "Don't be so dramatic," she snapped. "You're not going to use that car anymore. You never go anywhere." I couldn't speak. I physically couldn't form the words. My hands were shaking. My ears were ringing. That night, I confronted my parents. I sat them both down at the kitchen table and laid it all out. How this wasn't just unfair, it was illegal. How I felt like I didn't even exist to them anymore. Dad crossed his arms. "It's just insurance, Wesley," Mom added. "Why are you making this so hostile? Your sister needs help. You're acting like we're criminals." "You are," I said flatly. "You went through my documents. You impersonated me. You changed my policy. That's a crime." That's when Dad stood up. "I'm done with this attitude. You want to act like a stranger? Fine. From now on, you live here under our rules, or not at all." And there it was. The unspoken threat. The quiet war. The line drawn. "I've been under your roof, sure," I said quietly. "But I've paid rent. I've paid for the car. For groceries. For my own everything." "You're not special," he said. Cold. Icy. Like it was rehearsed. "You're just a boy in our basement." That sentence stuck with me for days. Like gum in your shoe. Like a nail in your tire. Just there. Always there. "You're not special." I stopped speaking to them after that. I'd come upstairs only when I had to. Work during the day. Microwave whatever scraps I had at night. My laptop became my sanctuary. I even installed a little Wi-Fi repeater so I wouldn't have to leave the basement for signal. Days bled into each other. I barely saw sunlight. And yet, somehow, Brielle still needed more. Because 3 days later, I came home from a grocery run and found all my clothes on the basement floor. My dresser was gone. I stood there, stunned, looking at my folded t-shirts and underwear sitting neatly in piles. Like someone had carefully removed them to take the furniture without damaging anything. My desk chair was also gone. I went upstairs, heart racing. Found Brielle sitting in my old desk chair, now placed in the corner of the living room. "Oh," she said when she saw me. "Hope you don't mind." The nursery needed a little more storage. Mom said we could use your dresser. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Something in me snapped. Quietly, like a fuse burning out. No explosion. Just darkness. Silence. A shift. And that's when I began planning in earnest. See, what my parents forgot is that I've always been the quiet one. The observant one. The good kid who noticed everything and said nothing. But I remembered details. Passwords. Schedules. How my dad handles paperwork. How my mom talks to the bank. Where the spare keys are hidden. Where Brielle keeps her secret phone for texting her ex when she thinks no one's looking. I didn't need to scream to be dangerous. I just needed time. And now I had nothing but time. And while they laughed upstairs and passed around the twins like little trophies, I sat in the basement with my laptop open, a spreadsheet pulled up, and a plan forming. And it was almost ready. Almost. All I needed was one final confirmation. One little piece. And then, well, then it would all begin. I didn't speak to anyone for 4 days after they took my dresser. Not a word. I ate quietly, showered late at night when everyone was asleep, walked in the shadows like some forgotten tenant in my own house. I stopped saying good morning, stopped answering when they knocked, if they even bothered to knock. I became invisible, and for the first time in my life, I let myself be. You might think that was the worst of it. That rock bottom came when I found my shirts piled on cold concrete. But it didn't. Not yet. Rock bottom came a week later. It started with an email from my job. I work in cybersecurity for a mid-sized fintech company, fully remote, good pay, chill manager. I was in the middle of writing a script to automate some threat detection logs when I got a Slack ping from my boss. Hey Wes, can we hop on a call real quick? 5 minutes tops. I didn't think much of it. Probably a quick client update or something about the quarterly review. I clicked the Zoom link. Smiled. Hey, what's up? And then I saw her face. Tight. Careful. Corporate. Hey, Wesley. This isn't about your performance, just so you know that up front. We've just been notified of some concerning activity flagged from your IP address. Legal looped me in. My stomach dropped. I'm sorry, what? Multiple access attempts on restricted documents. Client reports. Expense audits. Password reset pages. It's all been logged under your device ID. My head spun. I never know. That's not me. I work with threat detection, sure, but I never touch client data. She sighed. We believe you. Your behavior doesn't match. But the forensics are pointing to someone in your household. That's where it gets complicated. And then she said the words that broke me. We're putting you on temporary leave until this gets sorted. My screen went blurry. I barely remember ending the call. My hands were shaking. My mouth dry. I sprinted upstairs like a madman. Stormed into the kitchen. Brielle was there, of course. Always there. Sitting with one baby on her lap and the other strapped to her chest, scrolling TikTok like nothing existed outside of her little bubble. Did you go on my laptop? I asked, voice low but quaking. She didn't even look up. What? My work laptop. Did you touch it? She blinked. No? Why would I? You were on it last week. I saw the history. I snapped. I thought it was just Netflix, but now I'm on leave. They traced access to our home IP. She stared at me blankly, then laughed. Oh my God. Are you accusing me of hacking? What even is that job of yours anyway? I'm not accusing, I said through clenched teeth. I'm telling you. If you or anyone else in this house accessed my files. Dad walked in mid-sentence. Wesley, what's going on? She compromised my work, I said. Someone used my laptop. Now I'm on leave. Dad looked at Brielle, then at me, and then he rolled his eyes. Oh, come on. That's paranoid. Who in this house even understands half the junk you do on that computer? I do, I said quietly. I understand enough to know that if I get fired, I lose my health care, my income, my rent. That's when Mom appeared behind me, holding a spoon, stirring soup like nothing was happening. You don't pay rent anymore, remember? She said, gently. We waived it when Brielle moved upstairs. Said you'd contribute in other ways. That hit me like a gut punch. No, you didn't, I said. You took my room. You took my car. You cut my food lock. And now my job's on the line because someone in this house can't respect boundaries. They all just stood there. No apologies. No explanations. Just the same hollow expressions I'd seen every time I tried to stand up for myself. Something shattered in me. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a breakdown. It was worse. I just turned around, walked back downstairs, and sat on the floor for hours. No laptop. No music. Just silence. The babies cried above me. The pipes groaned. The world spun. And I broke. I let myself feel every bit of it. The humiliation. The loneliness. The bitterness I'd been swallowing for years. I was 24. Jobless. Carless. Living in a basement like a squatter, fighting for scraps of dignity in a house that raised me. And the people I once trusted most treated me like I was disposable. That was rock bottom. And from that exact point, I started to climb. First step? Document everything. I bought a tiny used ThinkPad for $90 on Craigslist. Didn't tell anyone. Hid it under the loose tile near the water heater. Then I set up packet sniffing on our Wi-Fi router. Every device, every session, every packet logged and timestamped. Brielle's secret browsing habits? Logged. My dad's late-night visits to sketchy sites on his phone? Logged. My mom's online orders charged to my Amazon account? Logged. Yeah, she figured out how to use the stored card without the OTP somehow. Real classy. Within 3 weeks, I had enough to fill a binder. But I didn't stop there. I started freelancing. Quietly. Anonymously. Picked up some short-term cybersecurity gigs on Upwork and a private Discord I used to lurk in during college. Paid in crypto at first, then shifted to a private PayPal business account using an alias. I bought a second phone. Cheap burner model, prepaid SIM. Stored it under a loose panel in the ceiling with a magnet mount. I worked at night. Slept during the day. Ate protein bars and instant ramen. Trained myself like a ghost. And as I worked, something strange happened. I started to like it. The silence. The discipline. The isolation. Because for the first time, I was in control. I built routines. Coded scripts. Solved real-world problems for people who valued my skills. I started exercising too, just bodyweight stuff. Push-ups, squats, planks. Got a resistance band. It helped me sleep better. Helped me feel stronger. More grounded. By month 2, I had $2,400 in a separate account. Enough for a deposit on a rental, but I wasn't done yet. I wanted more. So I pushed harder. I cold emailed a small cybersecurity firm in Austin that I'd followed for years. Sent them a GitHub repo with some exploit tests I'd written. A resume with no address. No personal details. Just results. The founder wrote back personally. We've never had someone write their own security audit tool from scratch for a job pitch. We need to talk. 2 Zoom calls later, I had an offer. Remote. Full-time. More money than I'd ever made. The job started in 3 weeks. And with it came the power. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. I still slept in the basement. Still let them believe I was jobless. Worthless. A burden. I let Brielle roll her eyes when I walked past. Let Dad scoff when I asked about my car. Let Mom sigh every time I microwaved a meal for one. I played my part. Quiet. Passive. Invisible. Because sometimes the best revenge starts with a little patience. But I did change one thing. The basement. I cleaned it top to bottom. Bleached the floors. Fixed the wiring with a little help from YouTube. Hung blackout curtains behind the water heater to create a little divider. And then I set up my space. Not a bedroom. A command center. Dual monitors. New keyboard. Soundproof headphones. Portable AC unit. I built it all in silence. Ordered in parts using gift cards and drop-off lockers. Nothing traceable. They didn't notice. Why would they? They stopped looking years ago. But Aunt Melissa noticed. She called one night and said, I have a feeling something big is coming. I smiled into the phone. You have no idea. And now, with 2 weeks left until I started the new job, with proof of their lies sitting neatly on 3 encrypted USB drives. I was ready. All I needed was one final moment. A trigger. And wouldn't you know it? They handed it to me. Wrapped in lies. Sealed with a bow. It came in the form of a family dinner invitation. You're invited, Mom said one night, knocking on the basement door like we were roommates. Aunt Melissa and Uncle Dan are coming again. Saturday. It's important. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Because I knew what was coming, and I knew how to use it. Saturday came fast. Too fast, if I'm being honest. Part of me still had doubts. Not about what I was going to do, that part was locked in, but about what it would cost me. You don't spend your whole life craving peace and then light a match this big without at least wondering if it's the right fire to start. But every time I looked around that basement, the patched-up concrete, the exposed water heater, the mattress on the floor, the echo of pipes above my head, I remembered exactly why I had to do it. It wasn't revenge for the sake of revenge. It was correction. Balance. A recalibration of the scales my family had smashed with years of entitlement and excuses. And dinner was the perfect opportunity. They thought I was still down, broken, crawling. They had no idea I'd already climbed out of the pit and built a new fortress while they laughed at my collapse. The guest list was the same as last time. Aunt Melissa and Uncle Dan, Mom and Dad, Brielle, the twins. But this time, there were extras: Dad's old business partner, a retired CPA named Lloyd, and Mom's cousin June, who worked in social services. People with opinions. People who believed in the story my parents had spun for years, that I was the responsible one, the quiet genius, the good son, who sacrificed for his family without ever asking for anything back. Now, I was the recluse in the basement. The disappointment. That was the version they were going to parade tonight. And I planned to let them. The table was set when I came upstairs. Roast lamb, scalloped potatoes, 3 kinds of salad, and the good china they only used when they wanted to show off. I wore a button-down shirt and clean jeans, shaved for the first time in weeks, and tied my hair back. I looked put together, professional, polished. It caught my mom off guard when I stepped into the kitchen. "Oh, you clean up nice," she said, half smiling. I smiled back, tight. "Thanks." She turned away quickly, like my eye contact was too sharp. Like it reminded her I wasn't as docile as she remembered. Brielle gave me a look too, half suspicion, half boredom. She was wearing a low-cut black top with gold hoop earrings and an air of smug victory, like she'd already won whatever game she thought we were playing. And Dad, he didn't even say hello. That was fine. I didn't need him to. The guests arrived just before 6. Hugs, fake laughter, a few, "Oh my God, the twins are so big now," comments tossed around like confetti. I kept to the edge of the room, smiling, watching, noticing who gravitated to whom, who whispered when they thought no one was looking. By the time we all sat down to eat, I'd already mapped out the entire table like a chessboard. I sat next to Uncle Dan, deliberately. He worked in IT before retirement and still kept up with the latest in cybersecurity. He respected me, always had. On his other side was Lloyd, Dad's old business partner. I figured it'd be good for him to overhear some things. I waited until the lamb was carved and the first glass of wine was poured before I spoke. "So," I said, casually, "how's everyone doing with their taxes this year?" That got a laugh. The usual groans followed. "Ugh, don't remind me, hate this time of year. TurboTax is a scam. The works." And then I added, "I just filed mine early. Wanted to make sure everything was clean, you know, especially since someone tried to claim me as a dependent without asking." Silence. Aunt Melissa blinked. "Wait, what?" I turned slightly toward her, still smiling. "Yeah, weird, right? I got a flag from the IRS portal saying someone else already tried to file with my name attached. Had to open an investigation." Mom's fork paused midair. Dad cleared his throat. "That's nonsense," he said quickly. "Must be some glitch." "Totally," I said, nodding. "Except it wasn't. The IRS traced it to your return, Dad." Everyone froze. Brielle stared at me like I'd just grown horns. Uncle Dan stopped chewing. You tried to claim Wesley as a dependent?" Aunt Melissa asked, frowning. "But he's been paying rent. And working. That's illegal." Dad tried to laugh it off. "It was just a mistake. TurboTax auto-filled it from last year." I leaned forward slightly. "Except I wasn't your dependent last year either. I paid you $700 a month. You cashed every check." Now Mom jumped in. "Wesley, that's enough. Let's not make this a spectacle." I turned to her slowly. "Oh, I'm not done yet." I reached under the table and pulled out a small envelope. Quietly slid it across to Uncle Dan. "These are copies of the checks, front and back, with your husband's signature on every deposit." His hands were shaking slightly as he opened it. "Why would you do that?" June, the social worker, asked. She was squinting at Dad now. "Do you realize that's tax fraud?" "She's exaggerating," Mom said quickly. "It's not that serious." "She's a he," I said flatly. "And yeah, it is that serious." I took a deep breath. This next part, I'd rehearsed it 100 times. I've been living in a basement with no proper flooring, no windows, no insulation. I paid rent for a room you gave away. You took my car. You accessed my private documents to change my insurance. You let someone log into my work laptop and compromise client data. And when I lost my job, you laughed behind my back. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I watched the color drain from Dad's face. Watched Mom's jaw tighten. Brielle looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. I looked directly at my parents. You treated me like I was disposable. And that's fine. But don't act surprised when people start treating you the same way. June cleared her throat, suddenly looking very professional. Wesley, would you be willing to share any of that documentation with me? I nodded. Absolutely. I've backed it all up. Twice. That was when Aunt Melissa sat up straighter. I knew something was wrong. That basement is a hazard. And you made him live down there like a dog. Don't be dramatic, Mom snapped. He chose that. No, I didn't, I said. You told me I had to. Uncle Dan chimed in then, his voice calm but cold. I thought Wesley moved down there to help with the babies. But this sounds like exploitation. It is, I said simply. And I've documented every minute of it. And then, right on cue, came the cherry on top. A knock at the door. Everyone froze. Mom stood up, frowning. Who? I'll get it, I said, walking calmly to the front door. I opened it to reveal a woman in a blazer and a man holding a small case. My witnesses. One was a family advocate I'd connected with through June months earlier. The other was a housing inspector. They both smiled politely. Evening. We're here for the inspection. I stepped aside. Come on in. Mom's face went white. Dad stood up so fast his chair nearly fell over. What is this? What are you doing? I looked at him, the way he used to look at me when I disappointed him as a kid. I'm setting the record straight. The inspector walked through the hallway, clipboard in hand. The advocate followed, introducing herself to June. Brielle started whispering frantically, and Mom was already reaching for her phone. Don't bother calling the lawyer, I said. I already did. He agrees with me. Uncle Dan leaned back in his chair and let out a long, low whistle. Damn, kid. You planned this whole thing, didn't you? I just smiled. And that was only phase one. Because I hadn't even told them about the trust fund yet. Or the letter. Or the lawyer's letter I'd scheduled to arrive Monday morning, delivered straight to my dad's office. They say revenge is best served cold, but that night it was served on fine china, with scalloped potatoes and a side of stunned silence. The inspector spent 20 minutes in the basement. I didn't go down with him. I didn't need to. I already knew what he'd find. Lack of ventilation, no emergency egress, mold exposure, and clear signs someone had been living there without the bare minimum legal accommodations. You'd be surprised how easy it is to prepare an illegal housing report when you work in cybersecurity and know your way around digital forms and state databases. The family advocate, Shauna, took pictures, wrote notes, and kept her voice even as she asked my mother-pointed questions like, so you knowingly moved your adult son into this space without a window or proper fire escape. Did you ever deduct rent from him for this space? Were any repairs or improvements made when he moved in? My mom kept stammering. Dad tried to interrupt. Brielle kept saying, I didn't know any of this was illegal, like that cleared her of any responsibility. June, the social worker, had gone stone-faced. Aunt Melissa just sat back and watched like she was finally seeing the third act of a drama she'd been trying to understand for years. And me? I sat down at the table, calm, sipping water, letting it all unfold. When the inspection wrapped, the inspector handed a copy of the report to Shauna and nodded at me. I'll submit this to housing authorities on Monday. He's got a solid case if he wants to take this further. I do, I said plainly. That was the first time I saw my father truly panicked. His voice went sharp. Wesley, don't be stupid. You want to bring in the government over a misunderstanding. I stood up. Misunderstanding? You moved me into an illegal space, accessed my personal documents without consent, filed false tax information, and endangered my job by allowing unauthorized access to confidential files. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a pattern. My voice didn't shake. Not once. Dad's face turned red. We gave you a place to live. You sold me on obedience. And when I stopped complying, you took everything I had left. So now I'm taking it back. Before he could respond, I pulled a thick envelope from my jacket and dropped it on the table. This is a letter from my attorney. It contains a formal demand for reimbursement of the rent I paid while being housed in an uninhabitable space, damages for potential loss of employment, and documentation of identity fraud related to my insurance and taxes. You have 10 business days to respond. Mom clutched her wine glass like it was a life raft. Wesley, we're family. No, I said, shaking my head. You stopped being that the moment you let her. I nodded at Brielle. Treat me like I was the family butler. Brielle scoffed. Oh, come on. This whole thing is because you're jealous of my babies. Grow up. I turned to her. You're the same person who thought you could hijack my car and my life because you had twins. I hope you take better care of them than you took of your own brother." Her face twisted into something bitter, but I didn't let her speak. I was done being interrupted. You all wanted me small, obedient, quiet, and now you're shocked I found my voice. And then I pulled the final card. Another envelope. Smaller. Personal. "I wasn't going to share this tonight," I said, "but now feels like the right time." I handed it to Aunt Melissa. She opened it, slowly. "Read the first few lines." Her hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God, what is it?" Dad asked. She looked up, eyes wide. "It's from your father. A handwritten codicil to his will." Mom blinked. "Your father? He's been gone for years." "Yes," I said. "And apparently before he died, he amended the terms of the inheritance. He left me his entire share of the family trust. Not Brielle, not either of you. Just me." The table exploded into overlapping voices. "That's not possible. He said everything was divided evenly. He wouldn't do that." But Melissa, who had handled some of the estate affairs after my grandfather's death, kept reading. Then she looked at me and whispered, "How long have you known?" "Since last year," I said. "He mailed it to me directly. Said I was the only one he trusted to carry on the family legacy. He saw what you were becoming, and he didn't want his name tied to it." Dad tried to laugh, but it sounded hollow. "That's not legally binding. We had everything notarized. Except this," I said, "which was legally witnessed by two of his caretakers, both of whom I've already spoken to. One gave me a sworn affidavit. The other sent a video." I tapped my phone. "And if you want to contest it, you can. But my attorney's already expecting it. Just know, the court will see everything I've recorded. Every text, every bank transfer, every cent." Mom was pale now. Really pale. Her lips were tight. Silent. "Brielle?" She stood up, grabbed her phone, and stormed out. No one stopped her. Uncle Dan finally spoke again, his voice low. "What are you going to do?" I looked around the table. At the people who'd either hurt me or watch me get hurt. "I'm leaving," I said. "I signed the lease for my new apartment yesterday. Moving out by Monday. But before I go, I'm clearing my name. I'm reporting the illegal tenancy. I'm filing for tax identity abuse. And I'm making sure every relevant party knows what happened here." Dad slumped into his chair. "You destroy your own parents over this? You already destroyed yourselves," I said. "I'm just putting the pieces where they belong." Aunt Melissa stood up and hugged me. Tight. Whispered in my ear. "He'd be proud of you. Your grandfather. He always said you had fire. You just needed the right moment to let it burn." And it burned. The fallout wasn't dramatic, not at first. I left Monday morning with everything I owned in 2 duffel bags and a hard drive. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. My new apartment was small, clean, and full of light. I bought myself a used car 3 weeks later. Started the new job. Found my rhythm again. 2 months later, the housing board fined my parents $8,000 for the illegal basement dwelling. My tax case went through. I was awarded a refund and opened an investigation into identity misrepresentation. Brielle lost custody of the twins temporarily because the court flagged her living situation as unstable, and her ex filed a petition with the photos I'd taken of the chaos upstairs. I hadn't planned that, but I didn't stop it either. As for the trust fund, still tied up in probate. But the courts are leaning in my favor. Strongly. Melissa's backing me. So are the caretakers. And the attorney who helped file the codicil told me that with my documentation, it's not even a close call. I haven't spoken to my parents since I left. Not once. They sent a letter. No apology. Just complaints. Accusations. Guilt-tripping. I shredded it. Because I'm done explaining myself to people who never listened. I built something in that basement. Not just a computer rig or a case file, but me. A version of myself that doesn't flinch. That doesn't beg. That doesn't settle for crumbs at a table he helped build. I'm no longer the quiet son in the basement. I'm the storm they never saw coming. And I'm just getting started. Thank you for listening to my story.